Ulf, thanks for joining me.
Wow, thanks for having me.
Obviously, Ericsson really enables the connectivity of all these devices, the networks, which is a key component of this relationship between humans and machines. Talk a little about that, about how you see this intertwined relationship and how you've seen it grown of how we use devices and how we use specifically connected devices.
I think there are multiple different angles to that when it comes to communication. Obviously, the telco industry is one that's been dealing with communication for so long time. So one aspect is, of course, the interaction between devices and people who use devices. And I think there is a lot of things happening in that area where we are expecting a much more intuitive experience, but also an experience that knows what we're going to do, related then, of course, to artificial intelligence in the device aspect. Not all of that can be built into the devices, which means that the network has to provide part of the artificial intelligence that is expressed through devices to people using them. The other aspect, I think, of this is the operations side of network technology. So carriers is huge organizations that has had a fairly strict way of doing their business. It's now coming under a lot of pressure from technology shifts and changes into becoming something that's much more efficient, but also that can change state in a much, much faster way. That's another connection where both artificial intelligence, but also the connection to people that are actually operating and running around fixing things in these networks is where these kind of technology shifts have big, big impacts. Now, having said that, the ultimate part of this would, of course, be the chips that would be, for example, connected directly to bodies. We've been talking a little bit about that here at the Techonomy, and it's been fascinating to hear research from that area. There's been speakers about that. And I can just see the connection into, for example, 5G and the next generation communications technology.
So when you talk about that behavior and what you're seeing in AI and devices and 5G, Ericsson is truly a global company operating at massive scale all over the world. Are you seeing those similar behaviors across all markets, or where are you really seeing, the fastest development?
Well, I think we are actually seeing a more diverse development today than we did just, let's say, 10 years ago. The big drive in globalization 10 years ago was really to create that global standard and make sure we had only one standard. There should be no more standards wars. We should be able to build communications on a truly just global scale. As we're now addressing the Internet of Things, 5G, which is really built up to the vision of everything that can benefit from a connection, will have one to be able to get into practically every industry, every enterprise with connectivity. As we see that happening, we're also coming into a much more perhaps even nationalistic agenda when it comes to modernizing industry, when it comes to how investments are being done, when it comes to how the role of carriers will be in this sense, where I think there will be many different solutions. I can see development in China, which is quite different from development here in the United States, or in Europe, or in Russia, the big centers of gravity and the geopolitical situation we're in. And I think we're going to see different things. But I think the underlying technologies that are being used are going to be the same. But the solutions, and that was referred to here as the geopolitical stacks, are going to be stacked in a different way.